That's right. It's orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason talking with Eric Edholm from NFL.com about this NFL draft. And Eric, you wrote a piece at NFL.com about the pressure-packed draft and how Sean Payton was number one on your list.
Yeah, I mean, I listed 9 teams. I probably could have listed all 32. Let's face it, every team puts a lot into this thing. But yeah, I mean, look at the situation they're in, right? It's their, a roster that needs sprucing in a lot of spots. A vacant quarterback hole is obviously the biggest. Cost-cutting measures, a lack of future picks. I mean, every pick matters, but it feels like there's an extra emphasis, especially given where they're sitting and what it might take to get up and into that upper reaches of the draft and land a quarterback. And being in a division with the Chiefs and with Jim Harbaugh and with Antonio Pierce and the Raiders did some good things this offseason and last year. So yeah, it's just the deck isn't stacked against them, but there's a lot of wild cards out there that could hurt them.
And in your first paragraph you write about the Broncos, Eric, you say right there, herein lies the rub. They don't have many tradable assets, and the rest of the roster is in tough shape. So, I mean, although they may move up for a quarterback, is it possible that they might look at this situation and say, it's just too rich for our blood, that maybe it's best to stand pat? If let's say they like Bo Nix and love JJ McCarthy, do they go with the guy they like rather than the one they might love further up, simply because getting the guy they love may require them to be in a bad roster building spot for the next couple of years with draft capital?
I'd love to drive a Jaguar, I'd love to, visit Tahiti. I can't afford them, right? So that's sort of a problem, and I think every team that's worth its salt and understands, the big picture in terms of not just salary cap and what you're dealing with right now, but the future as well. All your draft picks, all the assets that you count on every single year. If you start dipping into next year's picks, you're already down they don't have a second rounder, right? Yeah, they don't have a second rounder this year. Mm-hmm. It just puts, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you're always playing catch up, I feel like. Now, some would argue the Saints did a version of this for years and Peyton was successful but they already had the quarterback in place. That was the biggest thing. So I think when it comes to this position, you have to be realistic about it as well. And I mean, if there's a cannot miss player in your mind and you can make a deal happen, worry about it later. Do we think that JJ McCarthy, let's say, is in that that position? Some people may do. I don't know. So maybe trading back is the right move, right? I mean, if they feel like they can get Nix lower than 12th pick, I mean, then I would entertain those options, see if you can pick up a second rounder or at least another third, and then, decide how to play it from there.
He's Eric Edholm, NFL.com, all-around great guy, lover of grapefruit. I'm going to have to ask you about that, Eric, but that's later. That's later in the show. Let's talk about McCarthy. He's so polarizing, and I personally have a second-round grade on him, high second-round grade. So does Dane Brugler from The Athletic, our dear friend. Where do you stand on McCarthy, who just seems like he's going to go in the top 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have him number 18 or 19 on my board, which would be right about the top of the second round if you assume that most years there are, somewhere between 15 and 20 true first round prospects, right? So, yeah, he's right kind of on that border. I couldn't go much higher than him. Obviously, the intangibles seem to be the kind of thing that have charmed teams, during the interview process and when they've done homework on him. There's something about this kid, his equanimity that was on display in the Alabama game. Now, he didn't have a ton of those high leverage drives where he was asked to be the man, but that was a pretty big one, right? You're going up against Nick Saban in his final game as a coach, and you lead a game tying drive and then win the game later. That counts for something. And I think the intangibles have been given almost an outsized share of his credit, right? I think a lot of people look at him and say, this kid was born to be a leader. He can command respect right away. He'll understand the big picture and the little stuff. Harbaugh's obviously raved about him. I'm sure Jim, for Jim, it would be great if he went off the board prior to the pick. Number one, you don't have to worry about answering questions about it or anything like that. But also, it pushes a good football player down. But he's been saying this stuff since October. It's not like this was all recent. So I tend to believe that Jim really does see special in him that other people do. So then again, how good are the tangibles? Are they special? I don't know that you can say that, but they're pretty good. He's got a decent frame. He's a good athlete. Threw the ball pretty well. I thought he's made great strides throwing the football the last 2 years, but I'm like you. I fall a little short of I have to do anything in my power to go get him.
Now, you mentioned the tangibles versus the intangibles for JJ McCarthy. You've got Drake May, number 4 overall on your board, number 2 quarterback behind Caleb Williams there, number 1 overall. What do you like about Drake May? And specifically, as I'm hearing you talk about intangibles versus tangibles, it's like with Drake May, there are some tangibles in terms of arm talent.
Oh, yeah. Arm talent, athleticism, build. I mean, he sort of checks everything off, right? I mean, whether you're using the old school, like a quarterback needs to be this tall and this heavy, or whether you're thinking about the new school, which is the athletic traits and the escapability and things like that. I think he'll get there. He comes from this sports background. Obviously, his whole family seems to be athletes. He melded extremely well at North Carolina with the players. I think he commanded a lot of respect there from what I can tell. And, like Sam Howell's his best friend or one of them, and this was a guy that he was technically competing against, even though he ended up redshirting that year. So, kind of just tells you that I think, like we were talking about with McCarthy, there's something about him that you can't quantify that I think holds up as well. But then on top of it, you also have this wonderful arm talent. And when he throws the ball, it's as pretty, outside of the crazy Caleb throws that he sometimes makes. I mean, it's as pretty as it gets, I think, in this class. Is he there yet? Coming from an air raid system where he didn't always understand the proper protections and didn't always hit on every throw outside the numbers. No, I don't think he is. But if you're a team that has some patience and isn't expected to win now, he might be the perfect choice. So I really like the kid.
It's Eric Edholm, NFL.com. And Eric, we're going to go big picture with this one, brother. And I hearken back to our 2017 NFL draft when we were in Chicago and you introduced me to Moscow Mules. So let's pretend that Mason's down for a good mule too. So let's pretend we got 3 mules. We're sitting here having a good time, drinking some cold pops. I want to know why you think this league has a quarterback development problem, which it, to me, clearly does.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at a Zach Wilson, right? I mean, it was he blew up during the COVID year, I guess we call it now, 2020. Not like he wasn't on NFL radars before that, but, kind of came out of nowhere in some respects against the suspect schedule, and vaulted to the number 2 pick, at least some small part because of his pro day. Number one, we take prospects and throw them up the draft sometimes where you say, I don't know if I'm seeing it. Now that's one team's mistake, right? We can't blame it all on the other 31 or whatever, but there's that. There's the fact that only one can play at a time, and game experience tends to trump a lot of other things. I think teams are bad about their succession plans and having somebody ready to go, not just there's that question of, do you want the established veteran backup or do you want somebody with young, some youth and some upside who might be able to take over one day. Plus you have, I think, a number of different systems that, if you go from one to the other, it's going to take a little while to translate. And, I look at a situation like Washington, they should be in the catbird seat because you have Cliff Kingsbury, who has that air raid experience, and 2 of the, top quarterbacks are air raid quarterbacks. That should work in your favor, but it doesn't always happen that way. And sometimes you have mismatched coordinator and quarterback, or a different set of expectations for those people. They either are too gung-ho with them and throw the kitchen sink at them, or they don't give them enough. So I think there are a lot of factors, but some of those things definitely play into it.
How different could development look if we could say rewind the clock back to 97, 98, 99 when NFL Europe was a thing, and through Europe we got Brad Johnson, we got Jake Delhomme, we got Kurt Warner. I mean, 3 quarterbacks that were not that were Super Bowl quarterbacks, and their teams were in the Super Bowl because in large part of what those quarterbacks did.
Yeah, I refuse to believe that, a quarterback who was drafted. Let's just say that a draftable quarterback from 5 years ago who's now out of the league. Can they not play? Some of them, the answer is yes, right? But some of them, you just felt like it was the fit. It was a bad spot. They never got the opportunity. And what does a developmental league do for you? Gives you opportunities to play. And I mean, we're going to have to see how some of these spring leagues develop and whether they're viable from a business standpoint. But I think it would make a lot of sense. That was obviously the big one that I didn't mention, was if you have some kind of minor league system, right? We know how long it takes for baseball players to come up sometimes. We know, there's a value to the G League and in NBA. We certainly know that in hockey that the players escalate at different rates and different ages. Why shouldn't there be one, or why couldn't there be one in football? I know there's a lot of logistical issues, right? In terms of a roster and how do you control it and which teams can send which players where. Like, for instance, if the Broncos and Raiders both had players on the same team and they each had a quarterback, well, they're going to both want their guy to be the guy. So there are some hangups with these things, but still, I'm all for something emerging as a developmental league, whether it's directly tied to the NFL or not, because I think there are players who just never had a fair shake who have the talent and should be able to play or get their chance.
Eric could talk football with you all day, man. I got one more for you. Mace will get you one more as well, and we'll get you out of here. Appreciate your time, especially during this busy season, brother. I'll keep this one real easy for you. Do you believe in Sean Payton? Can he make the Broncos, an outstanding team again?
Do you believe in aliens? I've heard all this alien talk lately, right? I think that's where we're going. I still do. I'm stubborn in that way. And like Sean Payton didn't become a bad coach overnight. Now, he may have underestimated some of the issues, but I still don't think he went into it blind. I think he understood that, even as tough as he talked sort of last year about the need to get better and all that stuff, I think he kind of went in with eyes wide open on the deal. And so, the fact that they were competitive and made a little run at the postseason there for a minute and got back on track after the bad start, doing it with a road win, and kind of kick-starting things a little bit, says a lot about his ability to coach. He was working with a quarterback that, I hate to say it this way, he looked like he couldn't wait to get rid of him. And yet Russell had a decent year. I mean, it wasn't bad, right? So there's still a lot there. It's easy, obviously, in this era where Saban's walked away, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, you name it, all these veteran coaches, and Sean is just a part of that, just below those guys age-wise, 10 years, 8 years, whatever it is. It's easy to say, has the game passed them by? I don't think I would say that. I don't think you guys are either, but I'm just saying, this will be the acid test this year. We'll find out, but I would be hesitant to kick him out of the league for, I think he's still got some football left in him.
All right. And one more thing, kind of on Sean Payton's philosophy versus the philosophy of general manager George Payton. We alluded to it earlier. You mentioned like Sean is aggressive in the draft. Like he was in New Orleans. No team had fewer picks. Some of that was because they didn't have they had fewer comp picks than anybody else. But some of that was they liked trading up in New Orleans. That was their thing. George Payton, the general manager, has espoused the, quote, more darts, unquote, philosophy where you trade back and accumulate picks. How internally do you think the Broncos are going to reconcile that?
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, obviously, you don't hire Sean Payton if you don't think he's going to have a pretty large say on the franchise. Now, I'm not suggesting that George Payton doesn't have a say in matters. Of course he does. But at the end of the day, he's still going to make what I believe is the final call, or at least the most compelling reason why they should do what he wants to do. it's going to be a pretty loud voice in the room. And so does that mean he's going to be more aggressive the way the Saints sometimes were? The irony being that the one time they didn't slide up, it was when Mahomes was in their reach. I think we went one pick ahead of him, if I'm not mistaken. So, and that was the guy Sean wanted. Does he have Mahomes' regret, and does he see somebody of somewhat similar quality that he could possibly go up for? If that's the case, as I was saying earlier, if it truly is a solar eclipse rarity, like you're only going to get one every 10 years, you pull the trigger and you deal with the consequences later, because that player can elevate lesser players and cover up spots. Then again, that trade down and add assets philosophy is great when you're already kind of starting from a neutral position where they're at now. Obviously it would be nice to add picks, but don't close the door on those once in a blue moon type opportunities. And I don't think Sean will. I think if things break right, they'll be going. And if not, they have to be prepared to take the more passive approach.
He's Eric Edholm, NFL.com, and absolutely good stuff. We appreciate your time, Eric, here on Orange and Blue today.
Thanks,
Follow Eric on Twitter at Eric_Edholm. And man, just look forward to chatting with you more, brother.
Yeah, a couple weeks till the draft happens. It's sort of sneaked up on me this year a little bit, but I'm excited. I'm ready to go.
Here we go. He's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching, everyone. And Mace, how do you help us out on YouTube?
Do all the things: like, comment, share, subscribe.
Hit that notification
bell so that you never miss a vid.
Yes, that's right. There we go. See, we got Eric doing it now too. He's Mace. I'm Cecil. BT's BFD. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty?